everyone, welcome to our Glory Globe TV. Here is a breaking and amazing news from Taiwan, Taipei. Abhayata Yugengana was just 12 when the soldiers tracked his father away to be executed. More than 70 years later, he remembers that feeling of helplessness, confusion and fear as if it were yesterday. On that day, the military surrounded our family home, recalled the retired school teacher, aged 83. The county magistrate came to our village and told everyone that my father was engaged in corruption. Rumors spread about the allegations against him and my family went into hardship. His father, Yegonugu, was a leader of the Teso, one of Taiwan's indigenous tribes, and among the thousands of Icelanders arrested in the years following the end of the Chinese Civil War and charged with collaborating with Mao Zedong's Communist Party. At the time, fears about communist influence on the Iceland were at their height. Chiang Kai-shek's nationalists had only recently set up a government in exile year after being driven out of the Chinese mainland of Mao's forces. Paranoia was high and the fledgling administration saw local leaders as a potential threat to their grip on power. But Yegungu's real crime was not that he had collaborated with the communists. A church, Taiwan's government posthumously cleared him of in 2020. His real offense was that he had been lobbying for greater autonomy for the Iceland's original inhabitants. After centuries of migration by ethnic hand from China and a 50-year occupation by Japan, the Iceland's indigenous tribes had found themselves marginalized in their own native lands and hoped that the new administration would be open to a new approach. My father and other leaders knew that indigenous peoples were colonized and suppressed, said Abhay. They hoped that with the arrival of the new nationalist government, they would be able to change our fate. That hope was to prove fatally misjudged as the nationalist or Kuomintang government soon established a reputation for authoritarian rule and a policy of instilling Chinese into the local population. On February 28, 1947, in what was to become known as the 228 incident, the Kuomintang ruthlessly suppressed a popular revolt sparked by anger over official corruption. It then embarked upon a brutal 4-decade crackdown on political dissent under one of the longest periods of martial law the world has ever seen. Today, Taiwan's government estimates that between 18,000 and 28,000 people lost their lives in that crackdown known as the White Terror. Yugnugu and many other indigenous leaders were among them. Fast forward 7 decades and the dynamic driving relations between Taiwan's government and its indigenous communists has been transformed. No longer are these communists viewed with suspicion as potential sympathizers with the mainland's communist authorities. If anything, say experts like Ibusung E. Bhayana, a professor of indigenous studies at National Taiwan Normal University, Taiwan society now views indigenous communities as a bulwark against Beijing's territorial ambition. The Communist Party continues to claim Taiwan as its own despite never having controlled it and has repeatedly refused to rule out the use of force in reunifying with it. The idea is relatively simple. What better way to demonstrate to the international community Taiwan's distinct identity, its fearlessly separateness to mainland China, then the existence of native population stretching back thousands of years, they say. To highlight the uniqueness of Taiwan from China, the ethnic Han population in Taiwan are now emphasizing indigenous cultures and are paying more and more attention to it, Bhavana said. Ku Hang Chan, a research fellow in in Indigenous Studies at Taiwan's Academia Sinica said a turning point in the mindset of mainstream society came in the 1970s when large-scale pro-democracy protests broke out. Yes, wounds of the century. The governments currently recognize 16 indigenous groups with a combined population of about 58,000 or about 2.5% of Taiwan population of 23.5 million. Anthropologists say these groups have linguistic and genetic ties to Austronesian peoples who are scattered across Southeast Asian countries including the Philippines, Indonesia and Malaysia. Their conflicts with the ethnic Han who originated in China date back to the first waves of Han migration in the 17th century. Over a period of hundreds of years, the indigenous groups lost control over swaths of land and gradually retreated to more remote areas, said Professor Bhayana, whose Tiso tribe established themselves near central Taiwan's Alishan mountain, an area that today is popular with tourists. As we know and foresaw, things would not always be so bleak for Taiwan's indigenous people and peoples, though the suppression of local identities at the hands of Kuomintang was to endure for decades here. It was not until the nationalist government lifted martial law in 1987 and the Iceland transitioned to democracy after decades of efforts by civil rights campaigners that things really began to change. Today, Abhay feels relieved that his father's legacy is gaining recognition when indigenous peoples began fighting for the return of our ancestral homelands and greater autonomy. They realized that those deals and ideas had been advocated for by my father. He said our family was finally able to hold our heads up. Kolas Jotaka, a 48-year-old politician from the Ames tribe whose great-grandfather was also jailed during the White Terror, is among those who are inspired by Yugo. BNS 4, Glory Group TV, Delhi, India.